Money FM 89.3. Best of breakfast. Mind your business. Only on Money FM 89.3.
Welcome to Mind Your Business. I'm Audrey Seek. Now, communication has come a long way with the rise of the internet, from emails to social media and video calls, making it faster and easier than ever to connect across the globe. And now with artificial intelligence shaking things up, the way we communicate is on the cusp of yet another transformation, one that's set to reshape how we connect in our workplaces and as a society. But even with all of these advancements, one thing hasn't changed: the power of clear, intentional communication. And when leaders fail to communicate effectively, the ripple effects can be costly: missed opportunities, low morale, and even damage to the company's reputation. So how can businesses and entrepreneurs build a strong communications foundation in this digital-first world? We're finding out with Charu Srivastava, co-founder and chief strategy officer of TriOn Co. Good morning, Charu. Great to have you with us on the studio.
Good morning, Audrey. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you on. Okay, so we've been through a lot, right? The last decade, even the last few years with COVID and the rise of remote work. How have you seen the role of strategic communications evolve? And what are some of the biggest shifts that you've observed?
That's a great question. And in fact, COVID was a big turning point for communications. It's always been a competition in a way in terms of the way we communicate with, let's say, marketing, advertising, and the other ways of communicating, which is not paid for, which is earned, which is what we do and what we specialize in. What I'm doing right now, in a way, is also earned. It's kind of coming in and showing you my expertise and using that as a basis to communicate. So COVID was a big turning point because, of course, when we had to stay at home, people couldn't go out and consume the paid elements of communications, of marketing and advertising, ads outside in the MRT stations or the billboards. Those were not being consumed by people that the companies were trying to reach out to. So there was a big shift in terms of how do we then reach out to our stakeholders? What is the way to communicate with them in a meaningful manner without having to resort to these paid elements? And the work that we do at TriOn Co was then something that came into big spotlight. A lot of companies made the very meaningful and kind of conscious decision to switch towards doing earned communications, and that really made that spike and that big focus on creating reputation. Again, with COVID, there was a lot of misinformation, a lot of skepticism in the way people were consuming information. There was a lot of just doubt and fear around. So it was very important to be seen as trusted, reliable.
Yeah.
It was so important. So that made a huge shift in the industry and just the way that people and especially businesses were communicating.
Okay, so I want to find out more about TriOn Co, your company, which you co-founded with your two partners, I believe. All of you bringing decades of experience to the table. What inspired the three of you to come together and start this company?
I have to give a shout out to my co-founders, Marian Ng and Joella. And in fact, yesterday was our 2nd year anniversary. So this is actually really timely that we're talking about this. So 2 years ago, essentially, before, not the day itself, but a few months before, we were just sitting around. We're good friends. We worked together before. And I had left my job previously and I just wanted to take a break. I had been in the industry for like 13 years and I was like, haven't taken a break in 13 years. It's time to just, sit back and figure out and take a bit of a breather for myself. So sitting around in my house, we were just discussing and having conversations. And I was freelancing. I think the other two were also just taking a break and having a freelance career instinct. We discussed, why are we doing this separately when we could do it together? And doing it together gives us a lot more in terms of what we can offer to our clients and the industry. So it was a very simple kind of a random chatter that turned into an idea.
Yeah.
And that idea today is 2 years old. So it was a very organic decision. It wasn't something that I personally had planned and said, okay, in that year, this is what I'm going to do. My next step is going to go into starting my own agency. It was never like that. It was really a conversation, funnily enough, that sparked the idea. And we ran with it. And we ran with it to the point where now we are really successful and we're doing really well. Even though we're 2 years, of course, it's a long way ahead, but we're so happy with with the decision we've made, and just looking forward to creating even more good work that we do with our clients.
Yeah, so sounds great. Happy anniversary to TriOn, and what a difference 2 years makes, right? So walk us through, the services that you offer at TriOn and Company, and what goes into developing that clear and intentional communication strategy for your clients.
For sure. So the work we do, as I think I kind of talked about a bit earlier, was we are focused on earned communication. So that is anything and everything in which we don't have to pay for any kind of results, right? So whether it's advertising where you pay an advertiser or a publication, any kind of media to then put out your advertisements, whether it's marketing on social media where you're boosting your posts and you're putting in ad money towards that. We don't do any of that. So we do the other parts, which are more organic and things that we have to gain attention by convincing. So we need to convince our audience that what we have to say is of worth and is meaningful. And that comes from understanding what we are trying to communicate. So we can't go out and fluff because, people have so much to consume these days that it has to be meaningful, right? Like, why should they read your post or your byline article or your interview in the newspaper or listen to you on the radio if it's not interesting, it's not something that they are keen to understand or to hear about more. So knowing who the audience is that you're trying to reach out to. So we work very closely with the companies to really understand the crux of who they are, what's their identity, what do they do, and then in turn, who do they want to communicate that to? The audience is important because then you understand which medium you want to use to communicate. There's so much now, you talked about it, right? The digitalization of communication has opened up so many platforms. So are you going on social media? If it's social media, which platforms? Is it TikTok? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Facebook? So many different platforms that are popping up every day. If you're going media, is it traditional media? Are you going into new media? Are you going into the Straits Times? Are you going into the Mothership? Which are the publications? Is it international? Is it local? Is it regional? Is it trade specific? So kind of understanding those bits helps you to then also be able to tell your story in a very targeted manner, which makes it relevant. Because if you go too wide and you're going in and telling a story that's not relevant to people, you're missing the mark. And then again, you're not actually engaging people. They're not interested. If I speak to the wrong audience, they might be like, why am I listening to you? And they have that power now to switch off and quickly turn their attention to something else, right? Attention span is so short these days. You have to really hit the mark very quickly. So that intentionality and that target of how you communicate and also the words you use, right? Simple is the best, right? So you need to be very clear in your story. And having a clear story is in itself really important, because if you go on and you talk about something that's irrelevant or doesn't even have any kind of meaning towards it, because at the end of the day, people are very quick to ask, so what?
Yeah. So I think you brought up some big challenges that businesses face. The information overload that we have, the amount of the different digital platforms and AI tools we have now. It's like decision paralysis, right? Yeah. What do you do? So I know that you guys help cut through the noise. Can you talk about, every brand has its own unique story. So there's no one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to communication. So how do you go about tailoring your strategies, to fit each client's journey and needs? Like how much work do you have to do in order to craft the perfect narrative and to use the right platforms for individual clients?
Yeah. So you're absolutely right, Audrey. It has to be tailored. I think that's the main thing. There's no template or a blueprint that works for every company. So our first conversation with any client is always tell us about yourself, right? Because sometimes internally in the company, as the founder or the chief executive of the company, we see ourselves in a very different way from the way that we are perceived outside. And the communications that we do use is mostly about external engagement. So we need to break that kind of sometimes the rose-tinted glasses and be like, okay, so tell us about yourself. And then as from the outside perspective, we ask those questions. If they say, hey, we are the best company that does bubble tea, then we ask why. What makes you different from the other company that's saying the same thing? Because we can't go out there and say that unless we can substantiate it. Mm-hmm. So we have to ask those questions and understand. And sometimes the differentiator is something that might not even be on the radar of the executives who are running the company, because they see it from a very different point of view.
Yeah.
So we come in and be like, hey, what about this? Do you have this particular thing? And they're like, oh yeah, we do. And we're like, why don't we talk about that? If they have a particular offering that is unique and the first of its kind, but they've not actually thought about talking about it in a different manner, we amplify that.
Okay.
So our job is not to create things out of thin air. It's more about what do you have right now that we can help you to create that story and create the narrative. It's always based on facts. It's not about fluff.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like I said, if a consumer asks you, you say you're the best. What about it, right? Can you prove it to me? Can you? And with the keyboard warriors, with Facebook comments, it doesn't matter what platform you're on, there's somewhere that people are going to start dissecting your story.
Yeah.
So if it's not solid in terms of the truth and in terms of facts and figures and statistics and research, very quickly, someday or the other, you're going to unravel. The lies are always easy to find out these days. It's not even that investigative journalist who's going to go after you, but anyone can go after you now. That's a democracy of who can ask you that question and dig into the truth. So it's very important for us to really figure that out. And once we figure out what the narrative is, it's also then figuring out what are the right tools, as I mentioned, about the audience you want to talk to. So if your audience is 100% B2B, Facebook and TikTok might not be the place for you to be yet.
Right.
So then we kind of create the platform kind of mapping. And then once that, we also look at what are the different tools. Are we going to talk about, are you doing interviews? Are you doing thought leadership pieces, which are articles that talks about what you're doing? Are we doing videos about the chief executive sharing their story? Who is telling their story is also important. We're of the very clear mind that it has to be a human who is fronting a company.
Yeah.
In today's day and age, the human connection is so important. If you don't have a human element to those conversations, again, people are quick to move. So that window of getting attention is very short and very small. So if you don't hit the mark right the first time, you many times don't get a second chance. So mapping all of those things out and making sure the person is also kind of, ready to tell that story. So also giving them that training. Ironically enough, what I'm doing right now is usually I'm on the other side of the table, coaching my clients and explaining to them how to do these conversations and have these things where they tell their story. So I certainly hope I'm doing the right thing because I'm, walking the talk right now. And I think vulnerability is also important. Claiming to know everything, especially as a executive or a company, sets you up to fall, actually. Like I said, people are going to be very quick to dig into issues. If they see one little thread, they're going to pull at it.
Right.
So, sometimes it's okay to be like, hey, we don't have all the answers, but we're working on it.
Yeah.
Because that makes you more trustworthy.
Yeah. So to be transparent, but also to leverage what you do have.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So before you go, Charu, of course, International Women's Day is around the corner. So we'd love to hear your perspective as a woman entrepreneur and leader. What's your experience, navigating this space, and what advice would you give other women looking to break into this industry?
So I'm actually a huge advocate of not just women empowerment and equality, but basically kind of DEI on a whole. That's diversity, equality, and inclusion. And I think it's really important to have representation, not just in the work that I do, but in any place these days, because the people we're talking to and communicating with or selling to are so diverse. If you don't have the representation in the decision-making rooms, you're not going to be able to communicate and engage with them. So that's the kind of comms work that we do that is important. And even for us, sometimes when we do work that might have people who are not us, we do try and ask that view of people we might know and say, hey, does this resonate with you? Are we being sensitive to what you need and not? So kind of exploring that into the journey that I've had. I think it's important to be in a network that supports you and has that openness to different viewpoints and different types of people coming in. I'm really lucky and grateful. I've had some amazing bosses, female bosses, who have shown me that what could be. And that's amazing. Again, representation matters. So for us, we are a team of 3, and out of 3, the 2 of us are female. So for us, it's also important that once we have that base of diversity in the leadership, we bring that forward to the people that we work with, the people that we engage with our clients, with our partners. So I think my advice for women who are looking to go into an entrepreneurial journey or even just any other career is to not, first of all, second guess yourself. I think that's something that always holds us back a little.
Yeah, the internal battle.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that I've never had that. I had that. I think we still do. But it's really also then surrounding yourself with people who are then going to be able to, in a way, pump you up. And not, again, based on fluff. Like, these are people who know you, right?
Yeah.
So having the right mentors, having the right network of friends.
Yes.
Even if it's family, your partners, just people who are there then going, hey, don't worry about it. You know you're good. You've done this. You know you've got this. And if there are areas for you to better yourself, they should also be able to go, actually, that's something you can work on.
Yes.
But then supporting you, not to tear you down. And I think that support system is so important, and there's so many places now where we can get that support. Like I said, I've been really lucky that the three of us are super transparent and open with each other, so it helps. And our male co-founder is really, he has no choice. He's kind of in the minority.
Yeah.
But in a way, I mean, again, it's kind of like what the policies we are putting forward as well is really just to inspire other people to really do the best that they can do, regardless of who they are.
All right. Well, yes, intentional and targeted communication isn't just a nice to have anymore. It's becoming an essential tool for businesses to thrive in today's digital world. That was Charu Srivastava, co-founder and chief strategy officer of TriOn Co. Thank you so much, Charu, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Keep it here on Money FM 89.3.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.